and so they can't throw it out, so they have to sell it. So they go to sell it under a name called White Soap. And then somebody up at the company said, well, we're going to sell it under that, but I'd like to put it up against this other brand name. We're going to call it Ivory Soap. Well, Ivory Soap outsold White Soap, even though they were the same exact soap. Now, what's significant about this is that everybody and their mother would be making soap at home.
Yeah.
And they ended up taking soap out of the hands of people, not just Americans, but people in general in the West. And it became this thing where now you don't have to make soap. In fact, you don't even know how to make soap. And you don't even know how to make your own clothes now. Like there are so many things that we don't know how to do, which were common day, everyday things.
And that's like
And
150 years.
yeah, it wasn't even that long ago. And it changed everything. Um, so in the process of standardization and commercialism, we lose our imagination. And I try to walk softly around this commercialism bit because I'm not anti-capitalist, but man, because part of me wants to rail against. Don't say anti-commercialism. That's stupid and irresponsible. But it's like, yeah, but is it? Because like I don't even know how to make soap.
Well,
And here's the other weird thing. If you want to know where we have all of our television stories right now on television, they all come from soap operas. Who do you think was making soap operas? Procter and Gamble, who sold you Ivory soap
oh
that
snap.
floats. And
Okay, so let
yeah,
me tell two stories. Um,
no,
okay, fine.
I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
I'd love to
Okay.
hear them.
First story, my last name, Faturachi, right? My great grandfather, uh, this was right at around World War II. I think it was a little bit before World War II. In Iran, they decided everybody has to register for last names because nobody had last names before that, at least not in the Jewish community. But the government mandated you have to get last names. And my great grandfather went to register for last names, and he wanted to be called son of Elijah. His father's name was Elijah. And um, when he went to register for that, the registrar told him that his younger brother had already come and registered. And if you wanted to register with the same last name as somebody else, you had to uh, get written permission from that person. So my great grandfather, who was even more ordinary than I am, um, really found this difficult. But he went to his younger brother and he said, I need you to sign a letter saying that I can be the same last name. And his younger brother, so my family apparently for many, many generations has been cloth merchants. And his younger brother told him, you have to get a bolt of fatura, which I, growing up, was always told it was just an expensive type of cloth, right? Fatura cloth, and I'll sign the paper. So the story goes, my great grandfather got a bolt of fatura, threw it at his younger brother, and named us Faturachi, which means person who sells fatura. Now, for many years, I was wondering, what is this fatura cloth? And I was talking to somebody who actually knows Turkish, and I told him this story. And he told me where fatura comes from. Fatura is actually Italian. And which is kind of funny because all my life people kept on telling me your name sounds Italian. And I was like, no, it's not Italian. The suffix chi means person who sells. Fatura is short in Turkish for manifattura, which is Italian for manufactured.
Oh.
because despite the fact that we think of like manufactured cloth as being something that's less great, the fact is, go ahead and try making your own cloth. Unless you're actually really good at it, you're you're never going to make a cloth that's as sturdy and as, you know. So that's the first story. Second story, I asked my grandmother why, when she stopped having separate milk and meat dishes. We're Jews, right? And Jews traditionally have separate meat and milk dishes. And she told me when she was a kid, she used to spend her entire day with all of the other women taking things down to the river and washing them and bringing them back. Clothes down to the river, washing them, bringing them back. Dishes down to the river, washing them, bringing them back. And she told me when she finally moved to a city with indoor plumbing and there was hot and cold running water inside of a kitchen, her entire life changed because she no longer had to spend the entire day dragging things down to the river to wash them and bring them back. And so when some of the more modern people in our family told her, "Oh, we don't do separate dishes anymore. You can wash them in hot water now. It's fine." She figured this is like an entire different world, right? So she also, she also changed that. So yeah, I understand the desire to like go back to, simpler times and artisan things, and right. But then I'm an immigrant to the United States. When I came to the United States, all I wanted to know is, why is my life now so much better than it was before I came to the United States? Why did I live in such a shithole country? And I did live in a shithole country. And why is it the first day we came to the United States, we went to, I know the exact Ralph's we went to. Ralph's is Kroger's here in California. And I remember walking into the produce department, and there were these stacks of fruit, and they were all the exact same size. They looked all the same. They were all clean. There wasn't a bit of mud on a single one of them. And I didn't understand what was going on, because when you go to a greengrocer's in any other country, right, you have to wade through the rotten fruit and the good fruit right? And we have grade A apples and grade B apples, and they're all washed and completely, and and I just didn't understand how somebody could spend all of that time to just wash all of the apples and all of the oranges and arrange them so neatly and make sure they were all the exact same size. I didn't understand how that could be. It was just wondrous to me.
Can I say something about your grandma going down to the river?
Sure.
So I would imagine that this took place in a time or a period of time where labor and leisure, the lines between them, if we were to differentiate them, were completely blurred. And so in her experience, maybe she, in hindsight, hindsight's 2020, you can be like, oh my gosh, this is saving so much time and energy and effort, and it's extremely efficient and expedient. And these are all terms that we value in a modern industrialized, world that we live in. But I do think that there's blind spots where like we didn't like what was she encountering on her walk down to the river? You know, did she see the birds? Did she have an intimate relationship? Did she know their calls? Could she identify birds without even seeing them? You know,
Okay,
stuff like that. You know, like I know that that's like nostalgic and all that, but like
it is. That's precisely what it is. You're. So Michael Schellenberger is. I highly, highly recommend if you haven't spent time listening to him, listen to him
I think
because what?
I think I give up on him.
Well, really?
No,
Uh,
I listened to a few like
Okay.
or whatever. But.
Because so he's one of these guys who grew up in California as this really, really left wing guy, and at 16, he decided he was going to be like this green communist, environmentalist guy. And so he decided to go all over the world and spend his time with the people in the rainforests and things like that, right? And he has a very particular view I highly recommend actually listening to. I mean, I hear, what my grandmother really missed out on? Going down to the river with all the other women and spending the day while they were washing, talking to each other and being together with each other. And that's why I think like when on Bridges of Meaning we had the women sitting around knitting, that was one of the most beautiful things that ever happened on Bridges of Meaning, right?
Yeah.
And frankly, I think it would have been much better if it was people sitting around in an actual room knitting together. But they don't have to be knitting with their own homespun,
Bless you.
whatchamacallit, their own homespun uh, thread like Sherry does, even though Sherry was. I don't know if you know Sherry. You must know Sherry. Like, Luke, this may be the first time I've spoken to you.
Possible. But no, I did in a series on the imagination.
He's done lots of conversations with her.
Okay, so Sherry, like she makes her own wool from grass. Like she takes grass and she turns it into sheep and she turns it into wool and she turns it into clothing, right?
Yeah.
Which is a beautiful thing. And I want there to be people who know how to do that. But at the same time, I want to live in a world of Fatura cloth where I don't have to, because I remember my grandmother used to make our clothes. She used to make our blankets. She used to make, and I loved my grandmother, and my grandmother did a fine job. But you know what? The sweaters she made did not last like the sweaters you go buy in a store.
So
Well-
this is the reason why I bring all this up. It's not to cry for a desire to go back, because I actually really like my job. I like these coveralls that I have. I like all this stuff. What I think the importance of talking about this stuff and bringing it up is like to remember where it is that we came from. You know,
And where we're going.
and yeah, and where we're going. Because like, here's the thing. I mean, I think we're always blind to the wild card that's out there because nobody thinks like, oh, like the power can get shut off. Really? Like you don't think the power can get shut off, or at least you don't think about it. Good.
Toilet paper, COVID.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of nice we don't have to think about it, but that's why stories are important. I think to remember these things. Uh, it's fascinating to me because the thing is we don't see how fast we've moved. We really don't. I mean, to think even 100 years ago, there were many, many people in America who did not have power. It's insane. And now we're just like, yeah, whatever, power.
Okay, so Dave says here, like, I don't know, I can see both sides of this. I would love to have a guitar made by a master luthier, but it would be probably be like $5,000. I can buy a mass-produced guitar for $700 and actually own a guitar. Yes, but this is like, what's that Thomas Sowell quote, which is in my thing? Like, there are no solutions, only trade-offs.
Right.
The implicit trade-offs of your $700 guitar are nasty. I would say.
See, that's
It
the
depends
thing.
on how much you care about what kind of guitar you have. I have a $100 guitar. It does me great.
But Chad, you have a guitar. See, this
You're
is
not seeing the trade-offs, though.
No, Luke, you're not seeing the trade-off. There's the trade-off
Yeah.
is no guitar or a guitar.
But it's not just
Yeah,
that.
it is. without
but
without industrialization, you would not have a guitar. You would not have a home. You would be living like in the shithole that I was. And living in a shithole sucks. There's a reason people come to the United States. There are trade-offs, but you know what? There are things which are obviously better. That's why people come to the United States. Nobody's trying to. I had to escape from Iran and try to come into the United States. Apply. We waited for 8 months to be allowed into the United States. There's a reason people move from Iran to the United States, and only absolute idiots move from the United States to Iran.
But so what
If
I'm trying to
move to Iran, you can, Luke. You can try it. You will hate it. I promise you.
Well,
I don't know. First
you know
thing
what
about Iran.
I moved to a house that was falling apart and that was built in 1850 that I needed to renovate in order to even live in. And it operates on a boiler that's 50 years old. And there's all these like weird things that like I'm choosing a life that is, I mean, not nearly as difficult as living in a yurt or, you know, a tent somewhere, but I'm deliberately seeking things that are, honestly, I'll tell you what it is for me is I got super depressed and then I went to counseling. I did the whole antidepressants thing. The best thing I ever did was just like, okay, I'm thinking I'm going to grow some potatoes this summer. And then I did. And I experienced so much joy in that process of growing potatoes. It was like, okay, why don't I do this every year from here on out? And why don't I add more vegetables to that? And why don't I actually just like, I don't know, supply most of my food through the growing shit in my backyard? And then it gets into more artesian stuff. Like, oh man, and it's not even artesian at that point. It's just like, this is what's bringing me joy. And that's why I'm doing it. It's because I was so depressed in the modern industrial, commercialized, technocratic, whatever, that I'm like.
But okay, I completely understand that, and
Maybe it's all privilege. Maybe it's all privilege. I don't know.
See, that's part of the thing. It is. It really is. It really is, because you have the privilege of. It's not just like if your crop fails, you're not going to starve.
No, I'll go get a job.
You'll go get a job, or you'll go buy things. If you can't find, like, you're not actually. Have you seen the $600 sandwich video?
No.
You need okay. There's a video on YouTube. Here, I'll pull it up. $600 sandwich. Oh, sorry, I was wrong. It's not 600. It's 1,500.
I might have to get going here. Got the babe to attend to.
Hey, pull up my screen, Luke. So this guy actually made a sandwich from scratch, and he didn't actually make it from scratch. You can actually see it took him 6 months and $1,500 to make a single sandwich from scratch.
Hell yeah.
Because
that's the value of every sandwich.
True
yes,
cost. Plug
it-
for my live stream. True cost.
it and the fact that like I hear, I mean, when I was in Minneapolis, Luke was saying we were having the exact same discussion, and I hear, okay, yes, there are a lot of great things that we have not been prioritizing, we haven't been making, but this idea that life is a zero-sum game is just plain false. It's not that all things are equal and you only have trade-offs. Some things are just genuinely better and worse.
Gage.
How's it going?
Speak to us.
Well, I don't know. I've been thinking a lot about like how we think about, how our like basic idea of thinking about time is like a straight line as opposed to a circle, and how traditionally everyone thought of time as a circle. It's like as we go through cycles, and so in relationship to this, like even this conversation seems so demonstrative of where we are in the cycle, right? So we're on our way down. If you picture we're at the bottom, right, and you go up, and on the way up the cycle, it takes longer because you're kind of moving against gravity. And then once you hit the top, you start to come all the way down, and it starts to speed up. And you can see, it's so cool how you can see this analogically. Like, for example, in the year, the days get longer and longer, and then they get shorter and shorter because time literally speeds up at the end of the cycle. And like you can see this at the civilizational level where everything goes a lot quicker. And so questions like this they're so like this spot on the circle kind of a question. And so I just feel like that's important to frame this, that there isn't in some sense a should at like kind of an objective level. It's in terms of a recognition of the unsustainability of the direction that all of this is headed, because we don't have the wisdom. We don't have the wisdom necessary.
This is the difference between Abrahamic religion and all other religions. Abrahamic religion has a beginning of history, an end of history, and a promise that the end will be better than the beginning. That is the faith of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Yeah, but we don't know how to get there.
We live our lives in order to make the kingdom of God on earth as in heaven.
But I think it's more like I agree with you that there's a direction. It's not just a circle that goes around and around on a wheel. But I think it's more like if we're thinking, it's like that we
winding up.
We move along that line through cycles.
Right. Yes. But the difference is that while it's not, Doug Wilson likes to say, God draws straight with crooked lines, right?
Sherry, cover your ears.
We do believe that God in fact does. There is an arc of history, and frankly, I think it's the fact that Christians with their preterism have lost this idea of the coming of the Messiah being a good thing, which is causing some of our theological problems.
I guess for me, as a Christian, it's like I see mythologically Antichrist preceding Christ. And so therefore, when we have these conversations about the trade-offs, it seems like all of these trade-offs that we're making and moving toward are ultimately moving toward Antichrist, and that Christ will then come and get us out of that.
The idea of Antichrist.
I don't see how it can't be that way. And so when I see these trade-offs moving towards moving in the direction where we're moving toward, like, away from sustainability, then we're just ushering in that end. And maybe, I mean, what role we play in it is a very tough thing to say. I mean, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about recently is like what the difference is between trying to like force renewal versus, you know, stop people who are trying to prevent renewal.
Why the binary? Go ahead, Luke.
No, I'm not saying. I just think it's.
Oh, I
funny.
thought you were raising your hand and you was.
I was agreeing.
You're creating a binary. Look, we can't force it. Obviously, we can't force it because God is God and God rules the world. God rules the world, not Satan. God is the God of this world. And all we can do is try to participate in the good. Actually, Pajot put it best in one of his discussions with I only saw a clip. I didn't actually watch Jordan Peterson's whole Exodus seminar, but he put it best that there was a place where he was talking to Dennis Prager, and funny enough, it was Pajot explaining the Orthodox Jewish view to Prager, who being the Christian that he is, that didn't know, is he was saying if ultimately God turns the evil into good, why do you even bother, right? If you believe that both good and evil come from God, which Orthodox Jews do, and Pajot understands, right? Then there's no way I could watch that whole thing, Paul. I would have had zero hair left, and I already have zero hair left, and I don't know where I would find hair to pull out if I listened to that whole thing.
I could find a spot.
Oh, you're gonna shut this down? Okay. Well, you can shut it down, and we can go continue it on my channel.
Well,
Yep.
that's what my whole gripe is. Like, we were talking about something entirely different. Then Jacob had to come in and make it all about Jacob. So that's wonderful.
I'm sorry.
No, I like that you came in, Jacob, because I mean, it's just it like, you know, things change. You got to learn how to roll with it. Love covers a multitude of sins. Like, it's all.
No, it doesn't.
It's all fine because I do. Oh man, there's a lot I could say in relation to what Jacob is saying. I do. I don't know. I mean, I would say a lot of my thoughts on capitalism, industry, the free market, like I tried to talk about that stuff in my true cost thing, which I don't know if you saw, Jacob, but like, I think,
I don't have enough time to listen to the stuff on my own channel.
no, for sure. And people don't, you know, that's how it works. But, I think what I would say is the last word for this stream is that part of what I would advocate, to quote the great Bill Clinton, is the last acceptable remaining form of bigotry is against those with whom you disagree. And I think that's kind of the problem of our age and identitarianism and confessionalism, is that we ostracize and we out. The modern heretics are those that don't affirm the proper propositions.
No, they're not.
Exactly. And no matter how you want to define it however you want. That's the pattern behind everything. And so no matter how people agree, I think, or disagree, I think we need to try to see, because it's what I said at the beginning. To predate something is to implicit is the opposite. And no matter how poorly someone is saying something, if you agape them properly, you can find truth in anything. So that's my final word.
My final word will be, Jacob, I'm sorry I was rude to you, but jeepers creepers.
You weren't rude to me.
Oh, yes, I was.
I didn't realize
You just didn't hear it.
Yeah,
It's in
I
my
didn't.
head.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh,
Don't be sorry.
you guys,
Just
so
don't
cute.
do it again.
I'm pretty sure I'm probably gonna do it again.
Damn it!
That's good. You can make Chad a mediator. Gage, any final words?
I mean, I think it's all in between. I mean, I think I'm just trying to think about relation, and so like it's freed me in some sense to, you know, to set up binaries when you don't have to get stuck in the binaries is actually helpful. It's not like we have to take away binaries altogether,
Yes.
because binaries, if you recognize the binaries are there to create the tension between the chords,
Yep.
then that's where you can start playing the music.
Oh,
So
sleep token.
I'm not as, it's like, because when you first realize the binaries are so problematic, if you get stuck in one of them, it's like you're kind of like, oh shoot, binaries are bad. But then you realize, oh no, like the only way to express anything is through binary. But once you stop grabbing at any of the sides, it's like, oh, this is okay. And we can now, like, the 2 and the 1 can be their own binary that, you know, it goes on.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it escalates forever in some sense. So
Beautiful. All right, guys. Shut her down. Jacob, start up one. See you guys.
Bye.
Thank you.
Gage,